Now, the reason I show you this is I want you to notice that all pre-humans that you will see in the books, and go back and you can check, they will show you a head that looks like this one pretty much, grossly primate in its characteristics rather, because that's what the skulls of all pre-humans look like. But then they'll always stick these human bodies underneath those heads. And this is a subtle brainwashing that is performed on all of us to make us think that these are in fact pre-humans, because that's what they're called. That's what anthropologists call them, pre-humans. Now, you can't pretend that those heads are in any way human, so they don't, but they leave the body parts looking, you know, amazingly human. You have the hands coming down mid-thigh, and, you know, I hate to say it, but God, this looks a lot like my body right there. Point is, we're all being misled by these depictions, and notice them continually. It's the way I'm telling you. Now, next slide, please. Lucy is very famous. Everybody should know her story. Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, 1974, Afar Valley, Ethiopia, discovered by Donald Johanson and his team. She is the first of the so-called pre-humans. They are the Australopithecines, and she is one of the first types. Now, what we know from her is a remarkable amount, because we have 40% of her body recovered. With mirror imaging, that gives us 80%. So much more than any other fossil at the time. It was just amazing. So we know a lot about her. She stood about 3 feet 6 inches to 3 feet 8 inches tall. Very diminutive relative to us. But her bones, all of her bones, are much more robust than ours. Her upper arm bone here, for example, which is much longer than ours would be if it was a human that size. This arm bone it would end about right here. Also, it would be about that thick. So we can see she's much more robust than we are in all of her dimensions. She has the head of a chimpanzee, which we cannot tell from her skull, as you can see, but from others like her. Head of a chimpanzee. But we do know that she walks upright because we have her hip joint and her pelvis, and we have her, particularly her knee joint, all of which are amazingly human. So we know she walked upright, no question about it. She was an upright walking creature. Just didn't have bones that looked anything like ours, or a head for that matter. Now, one other thing I want to point out about this is the people that are paid to go out and find these fossils, these pre-human fossils, are paid to find pre-human fossils. So what they do is they fudge it every way they can to make them look human, and they always have problems with the arms, because all the arms of the pre-humans are too long from here to here, from shoulder to elbow relative to us. So if you'll notice, what they did is they fudged this way up beyond where it ought to be to get this up here, so they could get the fingertip down around mid-thigh, when in reality it belongs down around here. Keep these little tricks in mind. This is all part of the subtle brainwashing campaign that is waged against you to make you believe that they're telling it to you straight about how this all happened. Okay, next slide. All right, as I said, these are the first 4 of the Australopithecines, and Lucy is one of the first kind, Australopithecus afarensis. We have Africanus, we have Robustus, we have Boise. All right, we have basically a pair of upright walking chimpanzees, upright walking gorillas. You can see that, length of face, width of face, and sagittal crest, which modern gorillas have. It's that ridge of bone where their muscles attach to the tops of their heads. So from 4 million years ago to approximately 2 million years ago, we have a pair of upright walking chimps, a pair of upright walking gorillas, and that's it. Okay? Now, at 2 million years ago, we have a transformation. We are told it is a transition, that somehow the Australopithecines segued into the next creature, which is Homo. Homo meaning man. You will see they are indeed more man-like than are the Australopithecines, which are clearly primates, upright walking primates. So, we have this changeover from Australopithecines to Homos. We're told that it is a transition, it is a transformation, as you will see with this slide. Next slide, please. Okay, here we go. Australopithecine, early Homo. Notice, if you will, this is not a transition. This would require 20 or 30 gradual changes to get in from this to this. It is an overnight change. It is just sudden. Boom. The homos are here. I don't mean that like it sounds. Okay, next slide. All right, the homos are here. Here we go. The Homo habilis, Homo erectus, Homo archaic, Homo neanderthal, and then Cro-Magnon, Homo sapiens, us. Notice Neanderthal man going back and through the Australopithecines don't look anything like us. Nothing. Here we sit right here. Another transition. Now remember, we had 4 million years Australopithecines, approximately 2 million years. There's some overlap in here. And then here, 120,000 years ago only, boom, here we are. Suddenly, overnight, looking nothing like anything that has come before. The bones of all of these creatures are much thicker than ours, just like Lucy's were. And in every way, the shapes are dissimilar. They do not have, it's hard to tell looking straight on, but they have no foreheads. Their foreheads go straight back off their huge brow ridges, neither of which we have. We have nice forehead here. We have no brow ridges. Huge, round, nocturnal vision eyes. So did the Australopithecines. These are primate eyes. Primates have this kind of eye. Huge, wide nasal passages indicating a big flat nose spread across the face. We've got our little uplift of bone sticking our nose off our face. We have rectangular, small, reduced eye sockets, very poor night vision. A dramatic change has occurred. The upper jaw sticks off the face. Ours squished in. Nothing like us. Next slide, please. Profiles show the degree of change is startling. Prognathous mouth, no chin. Prognathous mouth even more so. No chin, and then suddenly flat mouth, nice chin. Look at the change through here. Australopithecine, Homo erectus, Cro-Magnon. This is as big a leap from here to here as from here to here in anatomical terms. A light year. A light year. This is not a transition. These are transformations, despite what you are told by anthropologists. Next slide, please. Now, am I making it sound my way just because the heads go that way? No. Let's look at a whole body. This is a Homo erectus called the Lake Turkana boy. Homo erectus, Lake Turkana boy. Now, notice, if you will, this guy's about 12 years old. His molars have not erupted yet. He already stands 5'8". He's going to grow to 6'6", maybe 7 feet in adulthood. We don't know how they grew. But already at 12 years old, he is a physically robust creature. Every bone in his body at 12 years old is far more robust, thicker, stronger than any bone in Arnold Schwarzenegger's body today. True. Now, why do you, notice too, if you will, the length of his upper arm. And he has some shoulder socket here, so they had to put it in the right place, so that forced him to put the fingertip pretty near where it belongs. It belongs a little bit lower, but pretty close. Now, what are bones like this all about? What's the deal here? Why are they so robust? Your bones are a function of the torque your muscles can generate. Your bones have to be able to withstand the pressure that your muscles can generate. And if not, your muscles would break your bones. So when you're looking at bones like this, you're looking at an incredibly powerful creature. What are you looking at? You're looking at primate bones, primates of the earth. This is how the primates are built. Gorillas, chimps, right on down the line. They are incredibly strong relative to us, are the primates. 5 to 10 times pound for pound. They can come, they'll come right out of the mother's womb, reach up, hands and feet, hook onto her belly, and she walks off. And they can hang on. Anybody's had a pet monkey knows what I'm talking about. Next slide. Okay, this is a chimpanzee minus its hair due to disease, so you can see the musculature in here. And the strength of these things is amazing. Amazing. You could take a male chimp like this, not a gorilla, and put it in a room with Mike Tyson. It's a battle to the death. And they both understand that. 2 or 3 minutes, this chimp is walking out. Now, he may be missing an ear or two. But the chimp is walking out. The chimp can tear him limb from limb, literally, apart. Understand that. Primate strength is nothing at all like human strength. Next slide. Same thing for Neanderthals, our supposedly closest nearest kin until just recently. Neanderthal fingertip bone, human fingertip bone. Segment of Neanderthal thigh bone, human thigh bone. Look at the difference. Not even close. This is quarters to dimes, shovel handles to broomsticks. No comparison. Our supposed, and we used to be told, absolutely, they insisted, they swore. We came directly from those guys. Even looking at this kind of evidence, that is what they insisted. Why? Because they have to explain it in terrestrial terms. Understand that science is hamstrung. They've painted themselves into a corner. They have to explain everything in terrestrial terms. They do not allow for outside intervention, whether that outside intervention is extraterrestrial or divine. And so they have to come up with explanations like this to suit the data, which doesn't at all support their conclusions. Okay, next slide. Well, I tell you what, if the missing link was here today, he would need about 20 or 30 cousins standing right beside him, showing enough gradual transition to make this plausible. You don't just get one missing link. You need dozens to make this theory work of gradual transition, the Darwinian paradigm. And they don't even have so much as a fingernail. Not a fingernail of the missing link. Which leads us to conclude that Charles Darwin is a blowed-up peckerwood. However, they will not concede that fingernail that's missing in that direction. Darwin's still intact, everything's still okay. Missing link's going to show up. It's been 140 years, not yet, but he will show up. Okay, next slide. All right, the throat thing, I want you to get that clear in your mind. Notice, if you will, this is a standard primate throat, and of course this is our throat. A complete redesign, complete. Not least of which is the fact that they can breathe and eat and swallow and drink at the same time and not choke. We, of course, you know what happens when we do. The peas come out of our nose when we start coughing. Okay, so the point is that primates with this kind of throat can make tremendous amounts of noise. Anybody's been to a monkey house or, you know, at the zoo, you know what I'm talking about. Hoops, hollers, screams, howls. They know no limits. They can just puncture your eardrums, some of them, howler monkeys particularly. But they cannot do the thing that we can do with our throats, which is what I'm doing right now, this minute. Break those sounds into little bitty pieces. It's called modulating. They can't modulate. They can't speak. And try as we might to teach them to speak, and we do. You know, Coco, they've been working for her, what, 20 years now? Up to maybe 3,000 words. You could put her in a third grade class and she could probably be valedictorian. But she can't speak. She can't speak, and she's never going to be able to because she doesn't pack the gear, as they say in the military. She doesn't pack the gear and never is going to. No primate is. We are completely different and completely special because of it. Next slide. All right, now, so here's what we're left with. This supposed smooth transition right on through from the early ones to the later ones, including this. Now, you can see, I hope, that all that's really happening here is the brains are getting bigger. And it's harder to tell because the Neanderthals and the archaics, their brains are expanding back here in what's called an occipital bun. But they're getting bigger every step of the way. It surprises most people to find out that Neanderthals had bigger brains on average than we do. 1,500 cc to 1,400 cc. Bigger brains than we have, Neanderthals. We shrunk somehow and got so much smarter. Figure it out. Point is that we're told that all these guys went extinct at 30,000 years ago, because that's when we see the last Neanderthal. It's when we find the last Neanderthal fossil, 30,000 years ago. Okay, so they went extinct and that's it, and we're left behind. We were told for a very long time that we appeared at 30,000 years ago. That Cro-Magnon appeared right as the Neanderthals ended, so it was a real nice fit. You know, we appeared somehow, we killed them all, and that was it. Transition, we took over the lease, and that was it. So, the reality then later proved to be that these guys existed at least 120,000 years ago. These guys existed down into 30, so you got this huge overlap of nearly 100,000 years where they're living basically side by side on the planet and not killing each other off. So that one kind of went out the window, so they said, all right, so we didn't evolve from the Neanderthals, we evolved from the Homo erectus. You saw the Lake Turkana boy and how much we look like him. We evolved from him now. That's the new theory. In fact, there are 12 ways minimum in which humans are not primates. Not primates. Our bones are much thinner and lighter. Our muscles are 5 to 10 times weaker, pound for pound. Our skin is not well adapted to direct sunlight. Our adipose tissue, we have 10 times as much. That's the fat under your skin. You cut us deeply and severely, and the cut's just going to open because of the fat, and it isn't going to heal without stitches, and could well get infected and die. You cut them up pretty bad. They're like a horse. It'll go back together and heal, and you know, everything has that ability to self-heal but us. We've got that fat. Body hair missing, patterns reversed. We don't have a lot of body hair relative to primates, and the pattern is completely reversed. Now figure this out. Why? They're thick on the back and light on the front, and we swapped it around. Heavy on the front, light on the back. What selective advantage is there to that? Why would nature bother? Okay, head hair and nails must be trimmed. Now, what were we thinking? Where's the advantage in that? Just to give the women something to complain about? My hair, my nails, you know. Sorry, I'm just you know I'm just teasing. But you get the point. That was not a good move. That was not a good move by Mother Nature. It's better to just have, like sending the kids to school in a uniform. Everybody looks the same. What are you complaining about? Everybody looks the same. If you could just, you know, if all our hair ended at the same length and our nails, and you know, just, that was a good thing. Why'd we give it up? Skulls and brains, not in the same ballpark. Not even close. Locomotion, most obvious difference. Primates, remember. Speech, we just saw. Throat's completely redesigned. Sex, no sign of typical estrous cycles. Genetic disorders, we have over 4,000. Very few among them. We have over 4,000. What were we thinking? How do we do this? And most of all, we decided to give up a couple of chromosomes. A couple of whole chromosomes to become what we are. We ought to have about 20 more, it would seem to me. We're so much better, so much more sophisticated in so many ways, supposedly. How do we drop 2 and do that? Now let's focus on these last 2 for a minute. Genetic disorders. We have over 4,000 and counting. 4,000 genetic disorders in our gene pool collectively, meaning you can find these 4,000 genetic disorders from Eskimos to Watusis. We all carry on average about 250. You may have 200, your wife may have 100, but if you two carry the same one, each of your children has a 1 in 4 shot of expressing it. Now, the key to this is simple. In nature, you just don't have that many. Faulty copies are done away with. Faulty products are done away with. Most things breed very true in nature, plants and animals. There are very few. Things like albinism, you'll find that in gorillas and alligators, and you know, I mean, but being an albino doesn't kill you. It doesn't really stop you from reproducing, so you can bring that kind of a gene flaw into the gene pool. But we have a couple of dozen that kill you dead before you reach the age of puberty. Whatever. You can't pass it on. There should not be a single one of those spread through the gene pool. Why? Because how did it get there? If it can't be spread through sexual reproduction, What's it doing there? It's there because of genetic manipulation. That's what all 4,000 of them are there for. Genetic manipulation. And mistakes were made and left because whoever was making the manipulations didn't care. Didn't care to get it right. They just were hurrying to get the job done. And so they left. Did they care if they were making something? Did they care if it killed 1 in 10? Did they care if it killed 1 in 100? They didn't care. If they're making sentient beings like us, they're doing it for a reason, and they're not doing it for our benefit. They're doing it for their benefit. Same with domesticated plants, same with domesticated animals. We're no different than them. Somebody came here and designed this planet to suit them. And we are a product of that program, whatever that program was. 3 primates and a human. Remember 3 men and a baby? 3 primates and a human. You have the human, chimp, gorilla, orangutan. And you know, you always hear this from the other side. Well, it's so much the same. It's so much DNA, so much the same. Geez, there's just a little step from them to us. Surely we evolved from them. Surely we did. But you know, we're an awful lot like a mouse too. Awful lot like a rabbit. But we are a lot like other primates. What's the difference? Well, you know, it looks pretty much the same, doesn't it? But there is a difference. They all have 48 chromosomes, and we have 46. Remember, we lost the 2 chromosomes somehow, some way. But guess what? That's an awful lot of DNA. That's an awful lot. How could we be even as close as we are, and we're wildly different from them, but how could we even be as close as we are if we lost 2 whole chromosomes? Guess what? This is the big secret they don't tell you. We didn't lose them. We didn't lose those 2 chromosomes. Guess what? Guess what? Next slide. Somebody fused them. The second one, somebody took number 2 and number 3 on the primates, and in us, fused it together. Why do you suppose they would want to do that? Keep the whole chromosome package there, but turn 2 into 1. Why? What if they wanted to breed us with something that had 46 chromosomes and breed us regularly to them and create an offspring that way? They would have to combine the package and reduce it from 48 to 46 without losing any of the DNA. And that's what they did. This is a Neanderthal, basically. This is a guy you do not want to meet in a dark alley. Now, what, of course, anthropologists say is that he is an extreme variation on the human norm, an extreme, real extreme variation on the human norm. But that's how they explain it. Okay, I ask you to take my word for it. Hominoids are real. They live with us today. They have always lived with us. It is their planet. They are the native, indigenous, upright walking primate of planet Earth. There was a split somewhere between the down on all 4 primates and the up on 2 feet primates, but we're not the one. The pre-humans are the pre-hominoids. Go with me on that. Now, if you do, what it means is, as I said earlier, we human beings do not have a place in the natural scheme of life on Earth. And that's a problem. So if we don't, where did we come from? Why and how did we start leaving fossils on the planet at only 120,000 years ago? All right? A pro-Sitchin person, as you will see. Okay? I have studied, and in part 4 of my book, I base part 4 on the writings of Zechariah Sitchin and the ancient Sumerians, because, next slide, I believe that the answer to where we came from is in fact going to be found in Sumer, ancient Sumer, modern-day Iraq, Tigris-Euphrates River, Zagros Mountains, the Fertile Crescent. And the Sumerians are the first great culture that we know to come out of the Stone Age. At around 6,000 years ago, they appear full-blown, boop, everything. Over 100 of the first that we attribute to a high culture the Sumerians produced. Now, logic would tell you, and certainly the Darwinian paradigm of simplicity leading to ever more complexity would tell you that the first culture out of the Stone Age is going to come crawling out of the caves on bloody hands and knees. Are they not? But no. These guys come sailing out and start building beautiful cities and have education and law and everything. Next slide, please. They had the first great cities, the first great city centers, the first high-rise buildings, the first walls, the first roads, the first wheeled vehicles, the first ocean-going vessels, geniuses with water, first agriculture, first animal husbandry, first laws, first court systems, first literature. You name it. They had it. Well, everything except cable TV, maybe. I mean, they had it. They were great. They were a fantastic culture. And the Egyptians, Greeks, and Romans come from their culture. Those cultures developed from what passes down from the Sumerians, or at least out from the Sumerians, I believe. Okay? So, one of the many things they had at first was writing. Now, this is what we're all taught. We're taught nothing about the Sumerians except that they invented writing. Again, they appear, boop, invent writing, boop, disappear, and that's it. History forgets about them. You never hear what they wrote. You never hear what they wrote. And you never hear how sophisticated they were because, again, it doesn't fit that paradigm. It's easier to just start with the Egyptians, Greeks, and Romans and move on from there. Okay? What they had to say, next slide, in their writings, their writing, by the way, was cuneiform, very sophisticated math-based writing. And by the way, their mathematical system, called sexagesimal, based on the number 60, is better than ours for using very small numbers and very large numbers. And they kept time around the great year, 26,000 years, how'd they figure that out, among other things. But in their writings, most of it is like these little hand things where it's just bills of lading. I sell you this, I'm buying that from you. It's like our paperwork. But they have a lot of them, about 5,000 of the 100,000 or more that we have, that have to do with stories of their cosmology, their cosmogony, their history, where we came from, how the solar system formed and all that. And that's what we're going to go over, what they had to say. Where did it come from? Well, originally when these things were being translated in the late 1800s, early 1900s, when the translators would read what they'd have to say, it was like, oh, come on, forget about it. Put them in the myth. These are myths. They have to be myth. It can't be true. And they put it in the myth pile, which Alan was talking about, myth. So, Zechariah Sitchin, a man named Zechariah Sitchin in the 1950s gets the idea, wait a minute, how does the first culture get a myth? Who hands it to them? Good question. Why didn't anybody else think of that? So, he assumes it has to be a history. They have to be telling a history, which then later gets distorted perhaps as myth by later cultures, but the first one's got to be a history. So he goes into the myth pile with that attitude and comes out with 8 books at this point called the Earth Chronicle series, which I use as the basis for a lot of what you're going to see here now for a while. Okay, we're going to go over what the Sumerians had to say, boiled down. Part 4 of my book is basically the cliff notes to Sitchin's work. Any of you that have tried to read it, you know it's a slog at points. Okay, I tried to make it as easy as I could so at least you have the cliff notes to go in and try it again.